We're doing a tier list of all the cards and merge tactics, but we're going to start with 1-star only, meaning not merged. Spear Goblin is probably the worst 2 elixir card you could get. Honestly, he does not a lot of damage. It's okay, but he attacks so slow, does not have a lot of health, does not have any crazy range. He is terrible. I would not pick him other than the fact that he gives you the Goblin trait, but I'm not going to be really talking about traits. This is not a trait tier list. This is just the unit, not their traits. Next, we've got Normal Goblin. Obviously better than Spear Goblin. Has more health, is a melee unit, but also does more damage quicker. It's kind of a no-brainer that he's better. He is better to use behind a tank, though, which we've got Knight right here, who is absolutely insane for the price. He has so much health. He does not do any damage, but if you have anyone behind a Knight and you are fighting these 2 cards, you will win. If you had a Knight and Spear Goblin versus a Goblin and Spear Goblin, the Knight and Spear Goblin will crush so unbelievably hard. I believe that you could literally have 2 1-star Goblins, if you could do that, and a Spear Goblin, and you'd still lose to a Knight and a Spear Goblin. He is just so much tankier. It's not even close. Next, we got Barbarian. He definitely does way more damage than the Knight, but has less health. And in the early game, when you have 1-stars, having a lot more health is usually better for your frontliner. So I wouldn't even really choose Barbarian, but the Barbarian actually does the same exact amount of damage as the Goblin, except he attacks a little bit slower, but has about 300 more health. Next, we have Bomber. Bomber is crazy. Bomber is really, really strong. He starts with AoE. He attacks pretty fast. I'm pretty sure that Bomber is just a little bit less DPS than Spear Goblin. Like, he's actually not that much worse and has an AoE. 360 hit points versus 480. Bomber has way more health. The only situation I'd choose Spear Goblin over Bomber is if it's the very, very first turn, because usually people do not choose 2 tanks. They usually go 1 tank and 1 ranged, and then, but if you look at their team and they have 2 melees or they're going 2 ranged and they're right next to each other, I would choose Bomber. These 2 are probably the best 2 elixir cards you can get as 1-stars. Next, we have Archer. She's definitely better than a Spear Goblin. I believe she does slightly lower DPS. It's probably about the same, but she does have more health. So if you are in that early game stage, you definitely will want to pick her over Spear Goblin, and I'd generally put her above the Goblins. All right, we're moving on to the 3 elixir cards. P.E.K.K.A. is the best 3 elixir card as a 1-star. It is undeniable. P.E.K.K.A. is probably better than most 4 and maybe 5 stars. P.E.K.K.A. has an absurd health, very high damage, and not that slow of an attack speed. The attack speed of P.E.K.K.A. is probably just slightly slower than Spear Goblin, which makes P.E.K.K.A. insane for only costing 1 more elixir. Now, we've got Dart Goblin. Dart Goblin is not my favorite. I really don't think Dart Goblin is that crazy as a unit on his own. I'd probably rather choose a 2 elixir Bomber. Because we're not taking into account traits, I'd probably choose a Bomber in most situations, because Dart Goblin's just not putting out that much DPS without the Ranger trait. So we've got Valkyrie next. Valkyrie is very solid. Traitless, though, she's alright, but in the early game, since we are doing 1-stars, she is very, very good, because most people will probably get 2 or 3 melee units by the time they've got their first 2-star, and Valkyrie is very, very good at taking care of that. Next, we've got Prince. Prince is genuinely terrible. I would choose a Knight over Prince 99% of the time. Prince is absolutely terrible. Doesn't have very high health for being a 3 elixir card. Doesn't have a very high DPS. His ability is practically useless in the early game because stunning the opponents that have no abilities doesn't really do much for you. So for that, I'm just gonna put Prince at the bottom of 3 right now. Next, we do have Skeleton Giant. Skeleton Giant is at the bottom of 3 because we are in 1-star. He doesn't need a buff. He just scales very, very hard as you star him up as the game goes. But as a 1-star, he's not really doing much damage at all, and his explosion only covers 1 hex around him, which isn't a very big explosion radius because when he dies, most of the units attacking him will move out of the range, or you might hit 1, maybe 2 of his units, but very not likely 2 of his units in the early game, and it's not very impactful. Not to mention, he does basically no damage. He is notably tanky, though. I'm not sure if I would maybe choose him over Prince. Prince, in my mind, is very, very useless. If Prince charged for a Ranger instead of someone in the front line, Prince would be very, very good. A very solid unit for countering Ranger, but he just doesn't. Next, we've got Executioner. Executioner is very, very strong. Very strong. Very tanky. High DPS. He is insane. He's got a high range, too. Honestly, Executioner might be interchangeable with P.E.K.K.A, except P.E.K.K.A would kill Executioner in a 1v1, but if you have a P.E.K.K.A and an Executioner against any other combination of these 3 elixir cards as 1-stars, they will clear so hard they will not even kill the P.E.K.K.A. They will not get anywhere close to beating you. It is not even close. So these 2 triumph the 3 elixir cards for early game. Now we're going on to 4 elixir cards. Princess first. Princess is very, very strong DPS. Starting with an AoE, she is basically just a far better version of the Bomber. The Bomber does not have as much range, does not have as much DPS, I believe has less health too. 630 health versus 480, so more DPS, more range, more health, basically an absolute upgraded Bomber. Not to mention, she specifically goes for their backline troops, which can usually be a Ranger unit, but you may have to play her up a couple hexes to make sure that they are in range before she starts firing. Otherwise, she will lock onto a tank, which is okay because she'll still splash them. Next, we have Mega Knight. Mega Knight is quite weak for a 4 elixir unit. As a 1-star, his stun is not very impressive as it only does a 1 hex radius around him and stuns for 2 seconds, which is not that impactful in the early game because he will usually only hit 1 to 2 units, just like the Skeleton Giant. He suffers kind of the same problem as a 1-star where his ability is not very good for the elixir cost, and he's not putting out that much damage. He is very tanky though, but would lose to a P.E.K.K.A in a 1v1. So I would generally not choose him in the early game. Next, we do have Royal Ghost, who is absolutely disgusting in the early game. He procs his invisibility very often, and he cannot be targeted during it, and usually you don't have many other units in the early game for splash damage to hit him while he's invisible, so he is very, very hard to kill. He has decent health, very high DPS. If you put Royal Ghost against a Barbarian and a Spear Goblin, he'd probably win. Not to mention maybe even 3 1-star Spear Goblins. If you could do that, he'd win. Next, we do have Bandit. Bandit is very, very, very weak as a 1-star. Probably the least efficient way to use your elixir, perhaps in the entire game. Low health, pretty low DPS, and her ability procs every 3 hits, which she can often die before even proccing it once, even in the early game, and especially as you move into mid-game, having a 1-star Bandit, she cannot do anything. Very, very bad card to pick. I would not pick her. Next, we have Goblin Machine. Goblin Machine is kind of mediocre as a 1-star. His ability procs every 3 hits, but he is tanky enough to get it off. The problem with his ability is it will stun a backliner usually, which is okay, but it replaces his normal attack. He does not swing while he's throwing out his rocket, and since it only targets 1 unit and does about the same damage as his punch, it really doesn't do much. It's basically just a stun every 3 hits, but it takes a little longer to activate, it feels like. So I'd probably prefer Mega Knight over Goblin Machine as a 1-star in the early game. He's just kind of whatever. It seems like all the goblins are just pretty bad, traitless, and 1-star. Now we're going on to the 5 elixir cards. We're going to start with Golden Knight. Golden Knight, his ability does not proc often ever. But as a 1-star, it's maybe likely to happen. He has to get the final hit on a enemy to use his dash, which won't happen often. He has decent health, decent damage, but if you put him up against a P.E.K.K.A, he will lose. If you put him up against a Royal Ghost, I believe he will lose. If you put him up against Mega Knight, it would probably be pretty close. Next, we're on to Skeleton King, who is very, very useful in the early game. He does have a cone attack, though, so you have to position him right, or I wouldn't choose him if they only have one melee guy in the front. If they only have one tank, I wouldn't really choose him over Golden Knight if I were to choose from the two, because that cone attack's kind of being wasted, and he is pretty tanky. He does have good DPS, and his ability is very, very, very strong in the early game. If he gets the last hit on a enemy, he will summon a equivalent star skeleton. So in this situation, a 1-star skeleton. It's far better than the Golden Knight's dash. Having an extra unit on the screen doing quite a bit of damage. I believe the skeleton is about the same strength and health as a goblin. So he's summoning an extra 2 elixir card onto the battlefield, and he can do it multiple times. He's very, very good, but I generally wouldn't pick either of these 5 stars over these 3 4 stars. I would probably choose all of them over these 2, not considering traits. Last and not least, we have Archer Queen. Archer Queen is insane. Very strong. Even as a 1-star, she is very good. She, as a 1-star, shoots 2 targets per attack, which is basically an AoE, but it can split. So you could hit their ranger and their tank at the same time. She has good TPS, pretty good health for a ranged unit. I believe she has the highest health in the game out of any ranged unit. She has pretty good DPS, and she has an ability that is almost guaranteed to proc, especially in the early game. They will not have enough DPS to stop her from proccing her invisibility. So it is basically guaranteed, unlike the other 2 5 elixir cards, but hers is guaranteed. She goes invisible for quite a decent amount of time, and she's still shooting during it and has a bonus to her damage during it. She could potentially take out 2 or 3 2 elixir cards by herself. She's very strong. That's not including a tank in front of her. Overall, in this entire tier list, the best 1-star card for their elixir cost is P.E.K.K.A. Hands down, P.E.K.K.A. might even need a nerf, because P.E.K.K.A. is so strong in the early game as a 3 elixir unit, as a 1-star. Nothing beats her in a 1v1. There's not a single 5 elixir unit that can beat P.E.K.K.A. The only exception to this is Royal Ghost. Royal Ghost, I believe it may be 2-star, but I'm pretty sure while he's 1-star, he completely counters P.E.K.K.A. because P.E.K.K.A. cannot swing fast enough before Royal Ghost procs his invisibility. So P.E.K.K.A. will just try to swing and then stop. Other than Royal Ghost, there's not a single card on the entire list that can counter P.E.K.K.A. And for 3 elixir, that makes her the best unit in the game as a 1-star. All right, let's get on to the 2-star tier list now, which is going to change up a lot of these cards' positions. Spear Goblin is not going to move. Still the worst card in the game. Low DPS, low health. Basically could be beat by any 3 elixir 1-star card in the game. I believe that 1-star Dart Goblin can beat a 2-star Spear Goblin. Insane, right? Very, very bad when you're not taking into account traits. Normal Goblin is also going to stay there, but I might put him above Archer just because Archer is not very useful as a 2-star. When you're not having any traits, she kind of falls off. I'd rather have any other ranger, but Goblin, he kind of steps up to the plate. Barbarian, gonna stay in the same spot. Doesn't get much better. Now we have Bomber. Bomber is definitely going up as a 2-star. His damage goes up. By this point, people have more cards on the field, so you're getting more use out of his AoE. So he is very, very solid. Next, we've got Prince. Prince is absolutely terrible. Even as a 2-star, Prince is the worst 3 elixir card in the game. It's not even close. As you star him up, he simply just pushes the unit that he charges further away. That's not very useful, as it doesn't take much time for that unit to come in, and you can't really choose which unit he targets, because if they have multiple frontliners and you put him right in between 2, you don't know which one he's going to really charge, so he's not very useful. And even if he does charge a unit, it doesn't put them out of the fight for very long. Very, very bad. He's still pretty weak, still doesn't have a lot of health compared to other cards. Skeleton Giant is going to move up a bit because Dart Goblin with no traits kind of falls off, as all single target rangers do when you're not taking into account traits. But Skeleton Giant does get an additional hex on his giant skeleton bomb. He gets far tankier. He still doesn't do much damage, but as long as you have him die first, he is pretty decent as a 2-star. Maybe past Valkyrie, but I don't think so. Executioner is probably still better than Valkyrie, but I'm not really sure because most of the time, Executioner is a single target attacker. He is not going to hit multiple units very often, but I believe he does get more range with his axe throw as a 2-star, so we are going to keep him above Valkyrie for now. And P.E.K.K.A. is going to stay the top of the 3 elixir cards. P.E.K.K.A. gets so much health, I believe above 2,000 as a 2-star, gets maybe, 800 damage per swing, which could take out a goblin basically in a single swing plus any other damage. So P.E.K.K.A. is on top of the 3 elixir still as a 2-star. Now we've got Bandit. As a 2-star, Bandit is pretty good, but is probably still going to stay at the bottom of 4 elixir because she's still in the mid game, probably isn't going to live long enough to proc it many times because she still has to attack 2 times to proc it. Same for Goblin Machine. He still has to attack 2 times to proc it, which is okay, but now he does shoot 2 rockets, but he's not very strong. He is sort of tanky, but not as tanky as Mega Knight. And Mega Knight has a bigger Hex Splash for his stun, which makes him very, very strong above Princess since we are not taking into account traits. And honestly, when we're not taking into account traits, 2-star Princess might fall below Goblin Machine because she's not very good without the Ranger trait. Next, we have Royal Ghost. Royal Ghost is still very strong as a 2-star. Even with no traits, he is very, very strong. He can take out many units in the game, counters P.E.K.K.A, and just solid, going to stay at the top of 4 elixir for now. And now we are on to the 5 elixir cards. Golden Knight is going to stay at the bottom. Golden Knight is not going to get kills often. It's not going to really change anything. Same for Skeleton Giant. He's probably not going to get the kill. He is staying a better unit, but it's kind of whatever. But Archer Queen gets significantly stronger. She gets double damage, double health, and she also attacks 1 extra target per attack. I don't believe her bonus damage scales at 2-star, but she's still very, very strong. Definitely better than the other 5 elixirs, and definitely the best ranger in the game when you're not taking into account any traits. So, overall, who is the best 2-star card in the game with no traits? It's probably Archer Queen. Archer Queen outpaces the P.E.K.K.A. once you get them both to 2-star, because adding that extra hit to another unit, when you're in the mid-game, they definitely have more than 3 cards by the time you have a 2-star Archer Queen. So she could be hitting their entire team and go invisible after your tank dies and she takes half health. She is insane. I'd put second place is probably Royal Ghost. Royal Ghost can take out half of a team as a 2-star. He's very, very strong if he keeps proccing his invisibility, especially on melee units, or if all their melee is dead and he's focusing on their rangers. If they have 3 rangers, he'll probably kill all of them, because the only time Royal Ghost is vulnerable is when he's walking from their melee to their rangers. That is the time when rangers will get him very low or kill him. So that is really his only weakness. If he could somehow teleport from their melee to their rangers, then he would be number 1 as a 2-star still. But I may mention that Archer Queen does fully counter Royal Ghost. Royal Ghost cannot get his hits off while Archer Queen is invisible, making her a better character overall. In third place as a 2-star, we're going to give to P.E.K.K.A. or Mega Knight. Now let's move on to the 3-star tier list. Spear Goblin is not going to move. Archer is not going to move. These 2 cards do not get much more value, and honestly, maybe I would put Archer above Goblin, because in the end game, when you have 3 stars, Goblin is a squishy melee unit with no ability. A lot of the other units will kill him, and honestly might be below Spear Goblin, because Spear Goblin, I don't know. Sometimes Goblin still gets value. Archer does move her way up, though, because of splash damage might kill the normal Goblin, or just not having enough health in the end game. At least Archer can hide behind your tanks and survive. Next, we've got Barbarian. He's going to stay where he is. He's okay. Maybe I'd switch him with Archer in the late game, because you don't really want to be using 2 elixir cards in the late game, and if anything, the Rangers are going to get the most value. A 3-star Knight is very, very, very tanky. A 3-star Knight is probably as tanky as a max Skeleton Giant, maybe tankier. So we're going to put him as the second place, and Skeleton Bomber is very strong, but since we are doing a traitless tier list, without the thrower buff, he doesn't have that much range, and he's just not that amazing, but I think we'll keep him above Knight just simply because he will hide behind your tanks, and he will do splash damage. Now, we're on to the 3 elixir troops as 3 stars. Prince is still the bottom. Honestly, I want to put Prince down here because his ability just gets more useless. He just throws their guy even further back with his charge, but he doesn't stun them for any longer. He's still pretty weak, still doesn't have that much health compared to any of the other units, so he's staying at the bottom. Next, we have Dart Goblin. Probably going to stay where he is. I'm probably going to switch Valkyrie with Skeleton Giant, and this is probably going to be the biggest move in 3 elixir. Skeleton Giant is going to the top of 3 elixir. His bomb gets gigantic. It is insane, and he can tank a lot of damage before dying. As long as you make sure that he is your front liner and he dies first, he can take out all of the rangers in some scenarios. If all of the rangers are 2 stars and they don't have a archer queen, I believe it will fully kill a spear goblin, it will fully kill an archer, it will fully kill a dart goblin, it will do significant damage to executioner, it will fully kill princess. It is insane. It will get most of their melee units to half health, and not to mention it will stun them all. It can stun their basic entire team. He is absolutely disgusting as a 3-star, and it is a guaranteed proc. As long as you have him die very early in the match, he will completely crush the enemy. He will give so much opportunity for your other units to attack. Next, we are going to move Executioner down because as traitless with no thrower bonus, Executioner kind of falls off. And Valkyrie doesn't get very much stronger, but definitely nowhere near a P.E.K.K.A. when we're talking no traits. If we had traits, Valkyrie would probably be at the top or below Skeleton Giant because of clan. Healing herself back to full health is very, very crazy. But we're going to go on to 4 elixir now. Royal Ghost falls basically to the bottom of the tier list. I'm only going to put Princess below him because his ability doesn't get that much better, especially compared to other units doing a lot more damage, so they can kill him before he procs his ability. And Princess, as this is traitless without Ranger, she doesn't get too crazy. Very strong, stronger than any other Ranger below, I believe, especially than the 2 elixir and Dart Goblin. Next, we do have Bandit. Bandit gets insanely strong because she now procs her dash every single hit, and she will dash towards their backline, stunning multiple units every single hit. I believe she is better than Goblin Machine because Goblin Machine, he is very slow to shoot his missiles out, and yes, it will guaranteed hit 3 people and stun them, but it's just not as quick as the Bandit. I believe the Bandit is doing more damage per dash and can stun more than 3 at a time if they are in the right positions, but Mega Knight will take the crown because he has more health than Goblin Machine. He's possibly doing more damage, but his stun gets so gigantic. His stun can likely stun at least 3 or more of their team at a time and does damage with the stun, and it doesn't take as long as the Goblin Machine. I feel like the Goblin Machine's animation is just very slow for the rockets, but he obviously already has more health, so he's going to be better than Goblin Machine. So that is the top of the 4 elixir with no traits, no talents, no clans, whatever you want to call them. I don't actually know what they're called. Next, we have the 5 elixir, and it's going to stay the same. These 2 are still conditional unless you have a 3-star and they have 2 stars on their team and they do not have a very strong tank. Then I'd potentially put these 2 above Archer Queen. Maybe Archer Queen still below Skeleton Giant because Golden Knight can go decently crazy if he's getting those final hits, and if he's your first 3-star and they have none, he can go pretty crazy. Overall, I'd still probably prefer Archer Queen over them. I am going to put Skeleton Giant below Golden Knight, perhaps? I don't know, because his ability gets worse and worse as it goes because they're more and more likely to have splash damage units, and that makes his skeletons not so significant. And it can also clutter up the field, making your units have to walk further. It's sometimes not the best. These 2 are interchangeable, but Archer Queen clears so hard. She's hitting 4 people at a time, doing lots of damage, has lots of health, can counter Royal Ghost, can counter an assassin team if they have assassin trait, but we're not talking about traits. But she is disgusting. But for 3 stars with no traits, I would have this as the top 3 units. Skeleton Giant, Mega Knight, and you might be expecting Archer Queen, but it's not. We're gonna go Bandit as the third best unit, as a 3-star. She is better than Archer Queen. And even if I'd include the 4th best, I'd put Goblin Machine above a 3-star Archer Queen in some scenarios, because Archer Queen just isn't that good without traits compared to them. They have game-changing mechanics that can really destroy the entire enemy team. Mega Knight can stun their entire team, shut them down. Bandit's going to be doing constant damage, not going to be taking a lot of damage because she's constantly moving. She's not really going to be targeted by their Rangers and can take out the Rangers because she will target them. She is very, very good. Possibly better than Archer Queen in a lot of situations. So that is the 3-star tier list, and that is all. I'm not going to rank the 4-star units because I haven't seen any of them, basically. The only ones I've seen is a Spear Goblin and a Goblin. I believe maybe I've seen one more, but I haven't gotten any personally myself, so I can't say how good they are, and it's very extremely unlikely to get them. But once you get to where they have lots of abilities, the 3-star version of these, like a 3-star Mega Knight, is going to be far better than a 4-star Goblin or 4-star Spear Goblin, I believe. And that goes for anything in the 2 elixir, just because they do not have impactful abilities. But that is all. I hope you enjoyed the tier list. I hope it's useful for you. This was talentless, so I am going to do a tier list for the talents next. And you can watch me every day, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll catch you later. I hope you tune in. See ya.